chapter 18, that is body fluids and circulation. So in this chapter we will be discussing maximum about blood and other circulating systems. What are the systems circulatory humans, especially for the human circulatory system. So before we enter into this chapter, we have should have to know the basic idea about blood. That is, blood is the only circulatory system which have the capacity to carry all the essential nutrients, hormones, signals, messages, other things, not signals and messages, other things from one part of the body to another. So it is very important to know the circulatory system of any organism, especially humans. So this blood is red in by when blood we already know that there are two ways are there. One is oxygenated part of the blood and another is deoxygenated part of the blood. So the oxygenated part of the blood will be pale red in color and deoxygenated part will be thick red in color. And once the oxygen circulation is cut off for a longer time, it will become violet in color. And whenever this blood is collected and when we centrifuge it, blood will be having two parts. One part is known as the plasma and another part is known as the serum. So the plasma is a part where all the things are present. That means the which is responsible for carrying carbon dioxide, which is responsible for carrying proteins, all the organic and inorganic parts, fibrinogen, everything is present inside the plasma part of the blood. And when this plasma part of the blood, when plasma without a clotting factor means the factor that supports for blood clotting, it is called as the serum. So these are the two things. When we centrifuge the blood, we will get another part. What we get centrifuge is formed elements means which is formed from one part of the body. For example, whatever the blood, for this you have to be very careful to understand, that is, whatever the blood that is formed in our body, it is formed through a process known as erythropoiesis. And erythropoiesis is the pathway by which the bloods are formed. And this erythropoiesis takes place inside the bone marrow and the mostly the thigh bones is responsible for synthesizing, producing maximum formed elements. And inside these formed elements there are two parts are there. One is erythrocytes and another one is leukocytes. Erythrocytes are known as the RBCs and the leukocytes is known as WBCs. And erythrocytes will be found maximum in number in the organism, that is 5 million to 5.5 million in RBC, and it is biconcave shaped, and it don't have mitochondria and don't have any nucleus. The main function, and it is red colored, and the main function is to carry oxygen, and it is done through the protein known as the hemoglobin. And this RBC's lifetime is 120 days. After 120 days it will go and die inside the spleen, and spleen is considered as the graveyard of RBCs, and it is located near to the spleen, just up above the spleen. And next is leukocytes. Leukocytes are called as the guardians, that is the policeman inside the body. Why it is called as WBCs? Because it colorless in nature, and these comes from around 600 to 800 millimeter cubes of blood, that means per volume. And these leukocytes are in two types, that is granulocytes and agranulocytes. That means when we observe under the microscope, when we separate leukocytes separately and observe under the microscope, there are two parts are there. Granules, some type of grain like things will be present inside, and neutrophils, eosinophils and basophils are the different types of granulocytes. And monocytes and basophils, they are agranulocytes. And you can see the diagram here: RBC, platelets, eosinophil, basophil, neutrophil, monocytes, T lymphocytes, B lymphocytes. So they all together is called as the leukocytes. And another part that is known as the thrombocytes, which is responsible for the blood clotting. They are very much important for the clotting purpose. And if you see about this eosinophils, basophils, neutrophils, and monocytes, we can see something that is present inside them. And when we see these neutrophils, you can see that it is multi-lobed, and eosinophils, they have bilobed. That is something present inside with granules. And monocytes, they are very big in size. T lymphocytes and B lymphocytes, they are present inside the defense system of the body. And these neutrophils are the most abundant that is present in among this among the granulocytes. Basophils and monocytes, they have the phagocytic activity. That means they will come and kill, or they will, phagging means eating, they will eat the cell which is responsible to cause some type of allergic things. And eosinophils are there, eosinophils are most common in allergies. So whenever you get allergies, the people, lab people will be searching for the percentage of eosinophils present inside this. And the name eosinophils, basophils, neutrophils, it is given on the basis of stain. Eosin stain, it is absorbed, so it is called as eosinophils. Basophils means they absorb basic strain, and neutrophils, they are neutral in nature. And thrombocytes will be having 1500 to 3500 thrombocytes per millimeter cube of blood. And next, that is the blood group, which is very important. There are two type of blood group system that is followed in humans. One is the ABO blood group, and another one is known as the RH grouping. So we'll know that O positive, B positive, O negative, B negative, those things we can see. So the blood group A will be having antigen A and the antibody B. This tabular column is very much important. So they can give to the donors A and O. The blood group B will be having the antigen B and they have anti A, and donors, they can give to B and O both. AB blood group will be having both the antigens and they don't have any antibodies, so they can donate to any type of blood group. And O will not have any antigens but they have both the antibodies, so they can receive only O. So there are a lot of questions is asked from this particular part. And most commonly, when the fetus level, the first blood group that is formed is O. And when this blood group is O blood group is formed, from that, because of the activity of the chromosomes, some sugars will change on the surface. Accordingly, it is classified as A, B, and AB. And it is Carl Landsteiner. He is the first person who studied about this ABO blood group. Another blood group is known as the RH factor. And AB blood group is depend upon antigen, and RH factor is also depends upon the antigen. So this is also that after finding out this ABO blood group, they have found that still whenever they are transfusing the blood, they found out that some people are dying. So they found out, same Carl Steiner in 1930s, Carl Steiner and his colleagues, they found out this RH positive factor, RH positive and RH negative factor from the same blood. And since they have found, why they call it as RH positive and negative, because this factor that time was found in monkey known as rhesus. So since it was found only in that monkey at that time, so they called it as RH positive and RH negative. And on this condition, there is one uh, natural possibility of stillbirth, which is known as the erythrothrombectosis fetalis, takes place. That means if in case if the mother is Rh positive and the fetus is Rh negative, automatically the mother's body will generate the antibodies against this fetus blood, and that particular blood condition is known as the erythrothrombectis fetalis. And first, mostly the first time the child will give birth, second time when the same condition occurs, so this body will automatically generate the antibodies against this. And the next is the another main function of the blood, that is the coagulation of blood. Coagulation means the how the blood get clots. That means whenever the blood vessels ruptures, arteries and veins ruptures, what is happening. So whenever this, if for this clotting has to takes place, genetically it is very much important, because if the genes of the clotting are not activated, the clotting process will never be completed. So we have a disease called as hemophilia, a genetic condition called as hemophilia. That means the blood will never clots at any time. So for the clotting to takes place, we need some other proteins also, like thrombin, fibrin. So these are the main thing that is coming for the clotting factors. And whenever there's a cut or a wound in our body, outside of the body, the fibrins fibrins will be formed from the inactivated fibrinogens, and this will be activated along with prothrombin. That time, same time itself, prothrombin will be converted into thrombin with the enzyme known as thrombokinase, with the help of the enzyme known as thrombokinase, and a cascade reaction will be running on inside our body. With the presence of calcium, they will go and stick to the area where the leak or the cut or a wound has happened. That particular process is called as the coagulation of the blood. And the another circulatory system, that is blood fluid system, that is present along with the blood, that is known as the lymph. Lymph means white colored or clear solution, and this lymph is running parallel to the normal RBC systems, because every time all the elements in the blood is not required. They need only few things at a time. So whatever that is not at all required at the time, that will be given to the lymph. And mostly the T lymphocytes, which is responsible for the body defense, we can see inside the lymphatic system. So whenever they are seen in, since they are found most of the time inside the lymph, we call it as the lymphocytes. So whenever there is an infection inside the blood, it will come to the blood and they will do its function. And lymph also will support in carrying nutrients and hormones, and the digestion also. The fats are absorbed not to the blood but to the lymphatic system. So these are the main things that is present inside the blood, that is RBCs, WBCs, lymphatic system. Next one is a circulatory system, circulatory pathways. Or majority there are two types of pathways are there, which is called as the open circulatory system and closed circulatory system. Open circulatory system means there will be no organs or structures will be there to pump the blood. But in the closed circulatory system, we will be having the structures like heart, arteries, veins. They will be responsible, they will be there, so we can maintain the proper pressure and temperature. And when we come to the structures, in the first year we have studied that all the vertebrates, they have a muscular chambered heart, and fishes will be two chambered, and amphibians except reptilians, amphibians and reptiles except crocodiles, they will be three chambered. That means two atria and one ventricles. And humans and all other mammals, they will be four chambered. And this Four chambered heart atrium is responsible for the pumping of oxygenated blood, collecting of oxygenated blood, collecting of blood, and ventricle is responsible for the pumping of the blood to the other parts of the body. And when we see into this human heart is 100% muscular. Origin is mesodermal in origin. And when we see this human heart is having uh, it found in the thoracic area between the two lungs, and it is slightly tilted towards the left, and it is protected by a membranous bag. That means the heart muscles is protected by a membranous bag known as pericardium. So why pericardium is there? Because this pericardium will never allow the heart to expand more than the limits. And this heart is having four chambers. One is known as atria and ventricle. We have a left atrium and the left ventricle, right atrium and the right ventricle, both are there. And these atrium and ventricles are divided. Atriums and ventricles are divided by a valve known as the cusp valve. You can see that left atrium, you can see that some structures are there that is cusp, that is the opening between the atrium and the ventricle. And the right also is having the opening between the right atrium and the left ventricle. And so these muscular valves are responsible for the flow, to maintain the blood pressure and allow the flow of the blood, everything. And opening and closing of these valves are producing that sound. So the muscular cusp that is present between the left atrium and the left ventricle, it is known as bicuspid valve, and to the right atrium and the right ventricle, it is known as the tricuspid valve. And this left atrium bicuspid valve is also known as the mitral valve. So whenever these valves opens, the blood will flow to the ventricles. Apart from this, we are having the cardiac muscles are protecting these heart, and these ventricles are very thick than the atria, because ventricles are responsible for the pumping of the blood to the aorta. So there is an area inside the heart known as SA sinoatrial node. They are considered as the pacemaker of the heart, because these sinoatrial node is that particular area from the heart from where the electrical signals originate for the pumping of the blood, so which the heart will function. And next is the AV node, and AV node is known as the gatekeepers of the heart, because they diverts the electrical signal that is coming from the SA node to the two parts of the ventricles, left and the right ventricles. And in this SA node maximum action potential, that means the maximum electric potential they can generate is 70 to 75 minutes. 70 to 75 minutes they will be generate that impulse. Within that time, average of 1 minute, the full heart cycle will be completed. So read this very carefully one by one, and if there is any doubt, please reply or ask so that I can help you out. Thank you.